Morning, Thomas. I saw your notes for the project review today. You look like you've been sitting in meetings for hours.
Honestly, Anna, I think I was. We spent an hour talking, yet I'm still not sure what the next step is. It happens every time.
That sounds familiar. Most of us spend half our day in meeting rooms without clear results. But there is a way to change that.
I'm listening. What's the secret?
It's not a secret. It's about understanding the 5 levels of how we communicate when we gather. Once you see the pattern, you stop just showing up and start leading the room.
5 levels? Tell me more.
Let's break it down, starting with why you felt lost in there just now.
Let's look at level 1. I call this the observer phase. Imagine you're in a team meeting where everyone is throwing out random ideas for a new marketing approach. It's chaotic, right?
Oh, definitely. I usually just sit there, pen in hand, trying to catch up. I don't feel like I have enough info to speak up yet.
That's common. You're waiting to feel ready. But at level 1, your job isn't to be quiet. It's to map out who the key players are and what the real priorities are.
So how do I map the room without saying much?
By asking clarifying questions about the process, not the product. Like this: to make sure I follow the workflow, could you explain how this new approach fits into our current monthly cycle?
Oh, that's a good one. It shows I'm thinking about the system, not just throwing out opinions. Let's try that.
Let's practice. Say it with me. To make sure I follow the workflow, could you explain how this new approach fits into our current monthly cycle?
To make sure I follow the workflow, could you explain how this new approach fits into our current monthly cycle?
That's it. You didn't waste time with guesswork. You got the team to show you the bigger picture. See? You're observing, but you're also guiding the information toward you.
It feels professional. But what happens when I've understood the workflow and I'm ready to contribute my own thoughts? That must be the next step.
Exactly. And that shift from just observing the process to actually adding value to it brings us to level 2. Let's see how you handle that move.
Moving up to level 2. I call this the contributor. You're no longer just learning how the team works, you're actively adding pieces to the puzzle.
Right. But here's the thing, Anna. Sometimes I have an idea, but I'm worried it'll sound like I'm correcting the person who spoke before me. I don't want to seem like I'm picking a fight.
That's a common concern. You want to offer your thoughts without sounding like you're saying you're wrong. The trick is to link your idea to theirs instead of replacing it.
How do I do that without sounding like I'm just repeating what they said?
Try starting with a bridge. If someone suggests a change to the monthly report, you can say, I like that approach. To build on that, could we also include the user feedback we got last week to give it more weight?
That sounds way better than my usual, I disagree, we should add user feedback. That always feels a bit blunt.
Exactly. By saying to build on that, you're inviting them into your thought process. It stops being a my idea versus your idea situation.
Okay, I want to get this right. Let's practice the tone.
Let's do it. Repeat after me. I like that approach. To build on that, could we also include the user feedback we got last week to give it more weight?
I like that approach. To build on that, could we also include the user feedback we got last week to give it more weight?
Perfect. You sounded like a team player, not a critic. You're finding a way to make the project better without ruffling any feathers.
It's a small change, but it makes the room feel much lighter. What happens when the conversation moves from sharing ideas to actually organizing how we execute them? That feels like it's going to be a different ballgame.
You're spotting the pattern already. That's where we move into level 3, the coordinator. Let's see how that works when the room starts to drift off track.
Exactly, Thomas. Once you're comfortable adding value, you'll notice the room sometimes wanders. People start talking about side projects or minor details, and the main goal gets lost. That brings us to level 3, the coordinator.
I know that feeling. It's when the meeting is supposed to be about the Q3 launch, but suddenly everyone is debating the color of the presentation slides for 20 minutes. It's frustrating.
We've all sat through that. At this level, you aren't just contributing ideas anymore, you're protecting the group's time. You need to steer the ship back to the shore.
But how do I cut through the chatter without being the bossy one? That's always the hardest part for me.
It's all about focusing on the agenda, not the people. Try a phrase like this. These points on the slides are helpful. To keep us on schedule for the Q3 launch, shall we set aside a separate time for design and return to the main budget plan now?
I like that. It validates their point, but sets a clear limit. It doesn't feel like I'm stopping them. It feels like I'm just moving the topic to a better place.
Exactly. You're keeping the momentum alive. Let's practice the rhythm of that request. Say it with me. These points on the slides are helpful. To keep us on schedule for the Q3 launch, shall we set aside a separate time for design and return to the main budget plan now? These points on the slides are helpful. To keep us on schedule for the Q3 launch, shall we set aside a separate time for design and return to the main budget plan now?
Great control. You kept the team focused without losing any friendships. Now, once you're good at keeping the meeting on track, you'll start seeing the bigger picture. You'll be ready to shape the meeting before it even begins.
That sounds like the next logical step. Does that mean level 4 is about planning the entire session from the start?
You've got it. Level 4 is for the architect. Let's look at how you can set the stage before the first person even walks in.
That brings us to level 4, which I call the architect. This is where you stop reacting to what happens in the room and start shaping the structure of the meeting before anyone even logs in or sits down.
I see what you mean. Most of the time, I just show up and hope for the best. I rarely think about how to frame the session beforehand. What's the main difference?
It's about being clear on what we need to produce by the end of the hour. Instead of just sending a vague calendar invite, you set clear expectations. It saves everyone from guessing the purpose of the call.
That makes sense. But how do I send that kind of invite without sounding like I'm demanding their time?
Keep it helpful and focused on results. You can reach out with a short note. For our sync on Thursday, I'd like us to decide on the software vendor. I'll have the comparison table ready so we can wrap up with a final choice.
Oh, I like that. I'm telling them the goal and promising I'll have the tools ready. It makes the meeting feel like a productive task rather than just another hour of talking.
Exactly. You're giving them a reason to be prepared too. Let's practice that invitation. Say it with me. For our sync on Thursday, I'd like us to decide on the software vendor. I'll have the comparison table ready so we can wrap up with a final choice.
For our sync on Thursday, I'd like us to decide on the software vendor. I'll have the comparison table ready so we can wrap up with a final choice.
That was clear and direct. When you do this, you change the energy of the meeting before it starts because everyone knows exactly what they are there to do.
It really does change the vibe. It makes the meeting feel like it has a point. But I imagine there's one more step, right? After I've organized the structure, what comes next?
You've reached the final stage, level 5, the lead. This is the part where you take full ownership of the outcome. Let's look at how you finalize a project when the stakes are high.
That brings us to the final stage, level 5, the lead. This is where you move from just organizing the meeting to ensuring everyone leaves with a clear sense of ownership.
I think I know what you mean. The meeting ends and people just stand up and walk away. A few hours later, I realized nobody actually started the tasks we talked about.
That's the classic empty exit. A leader doesn't let that happen. You need to close the loop while everyone is still in the room. You have to lock in the commitments.
How do I do that without sounding like I'm double-checking their work? I don't want them to think I don't trust them.
Focus on the summary, not the person. You can take the lead by saying, before we finish, I want to make sure we're on the same page. Thomas, you'll finalize the vendor data by Tuesday, and I'll handle the budget review. Does that work for everyone?
That feels so much better than just saying, okay, thanks everyone. It feels like I'm actually making sure the work gets done.
You're giving them a clear sign that the meeting has reached its conclusion. Let's practice the closing. Say it with me. Before we finish, I want to make sure we're on the same page. Thomas, you'll finalize the vendor data by Tuesday, and I'll handle the budget review. Does that work for everyone?
Before we finish, I want to make sure we're on the same page. Thomas, you'll finalize the vendor data by Tuesday, and I'll handle the budget review. Does that work for everyone?
When you close like that, you've not only led the meeting, but you've also created a clear path for the team to follow. You've moved from being a participant to being the person who ensures the work actually happens.
I see the full picture now. It's a real transition from just sitting there to making things happen.
And that is exactly how you build your professional presence, one meeting at a time.
Thomas, we've walked through these 5 levels, but knowing the steps and actually using them are 2 different things. Real progress happens when you put these into your own daily rhythm.
I agree. It's one thing to hear the phrases, but another to use them naturally when I'm actually in a meeting.
Let's treat this as a quick warm-up. We'll go through the core phrases once more. Treat this as your chance to speak along with us. Don't just listen. Say them out loud to build your professional muscle memory.
Okay, I'm ready. Let's do it.
Level 1. Focus on the workflow. To make sure I follow the workflow, could you explain how this new approach fits into our current monthly cycle? To make sure I follow the workflow, could you explain how this new approach fits into our current monthly cycle? Level 2. Build on an idea. I like that approach. To build on that, could we also include the user feedback we got last week to give it more weight? I like that approach. To build on that, could we also include the user feedback we got last week to give it more weight?
Level 3. Keep the group on track. These points are helpful. To keep us on schedule, shall we set aside a separate time for design and return to the main budget plan now?
These points are helpful. To keep us on schedule, shall we set aside a separate time for design and return to the main budget plan now?
Level 4. Define the goal clearly. For our sync on Thursday, I'd like us to decide on the software vendor. I'll have the comparison table ready so we can wrap up with a final choice.
For our sync on Thursday, I'd like us to decide on the software vendor. I'll have the comparison table ready so we can wrap up with a final choice.
Level 5. Lock in the outcomes. Before we finish, I want to make sure we're on the same page. You'll finalize the vendor data by Tuesday, and I'll handle the budget review. Does that work for everyone?
Before we finish, I want to make sure we're on the same page. You'll finalize the vendor data by Tuesday, and I'll handle the budget review. Does that work for everyone?
Good work. Remember, you don't need to use all 5 levels at once. Just choose one, try it in your next conversation, and see how it feels. Learning is a slow process of building small habits.
That makes sense. I'll focus on just one level this week to get comfortable with the phrasing.
That is the best way to move forward. Also, keep in mind that every workplace has its own rhythm and culture. These scenarios are meant as a starting point. Always adapt the language to fit your specific team and the situation you are in. What works in one meeting might need a slight adjustment in another.
I agree. It's all about observing the room and finding what fits best. Exactly. Thank you for spending this time with us to sharpen your communication. If you find these discussions useful for your career, feel free to subscribe or follow our podcast on Spotify. We'll be back soon with another workplace scenario. Have a productive week, everyone. Goodbye. Goodbye, everyone. Keep practicing.